Those Were the Days is filmed before a live internet audience.
Welcome to Those Were the Days, the podcast about watching TV from yesterday through today's lenses, and seeing if it's still worth watching and rewatching, or if it should just be left right where it was. I'm Audie, your host this week, and we're diving into a new year and a whole new topic. We're kicking it off talking about shows that make you say, this was for kids? Now, before we dive into the show we're actually talking about, I do need to introduce my fellow TV watchers. First, whistling the very best tunes, it's Steven.
You know, everybody should have a life goal. Now, after watching this show, my life goal is to eventually become John Hurt.
Next, the person with a magical sack, it's Amy.
The thing is, before the internet, you always had this show that you were the only person that knew it existed. And I just want to say that I'm happy, guys, that now we have people to talk to about it. To remind us that you didn't make it all up and it wasn't a fever dream.
And finally, the one with the glass that can see death, it's Travis.
First of all, I'd just like to say that I, too, have a magical sack. To go along with my magical glass. But that is about all I can really tell you, except for one last thing, which is clever girl.
Oh, I was drinking Travis.
Yeah, I got to take my hoodie off now. Then that really warmed up the room.
Not for children at all.
You know, I thought about that when I was figuring out who I was going to put with which one. And
You planned it really carefully. I saw how
tried
you
to.
did that.
I really tried to. I
Travis
tried.
just ruined it. Oh.
Listen, if we're going to talk about stuff that we're questioning, is it for kids? I'm going to dive right into that.
Yeah, apparently. So, again, we're talking about this was a show for kids. And I went for the classic creator of such shows with Jim Henson, and we watched an episode of the series, The Storyteller. And as we are to do before we get in too deep, want to see what everyone's history with The Storyteller is. You know, if you somehow missed everyone's reaction to the show last week. Steven, let's start with you.
This is gonna shock you because my reaction is the one you're calling back to, and I have never seen an episode of Jim Henson's The Storyteller. When you said Storyteller, my brain immediately went to The Princess and the Frog, which was like a special, and I don't think that was part of The Storyteller. I think that was just an offshoot, like one-shot movie that they did on TV. I could be
Have you ever
wrong.
seen The Musicians of Bremen? Because that's another one that no one else has seen. But it was on my disc, my video disc that I talk about all the time.
Yeah.
It was on the other side of my Emmett Otter, was Jim Henson's Musicians of Bremen. And you
Nice.
can find a really terrible version on YouTube, and that's it.
That's it.
Like, it doesn't exist anywhere. So there were definitely like a lot of those that they did.
Yeah,
Right.
I just remember that Sweetums debuted in The Princess and the Frog, or the Frog Prince, or whatever it was, and Robin and Sweetums, I think, were the first. That was
Right.
their first showing, and that's what I thought kind of was the vibe we were going for, and I was pleasantly surprised when it was brand new.
Yeah.
And look, I'm gonna steal the mic for just a second to say Audie's art for this episode is just so good. Audie, your art is always good. Like, I don't have any tattoos, but I want a tattoo of this one because it was real good. Like, it's just
I would get that in a heartbeat.
love it.
Like, we say it a lot that your art is great, and I've talked about like my favorite version of us that we've done, but this this particular thing that you did, it just captured the feel of this show. You really nailed it with that.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I do it, of us in characters of whatever we're watching, but this one I was like, how can I do this? And I was like, screw it. Let's just do it simple. And just
Yeah.
go for it.
So good.
Okay, Amy, what's your relationship with The Storyteller?
Okay, so like my intro, this was one of those shows that I had definitely seen. I didn't really remember it. When we get to it though, there is a part of this episode when it happened I went, "Oh no, I remember this one. I absolutely remember this one." So like I wouldn't have been able to tell you anything about it, but this is like John Hurt for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like even like I am a massive Hellboy fan. And so when I first watched Hellboy, it was, "Oh, it's the storyteller." Like that was it for me. Um but it very much was one of those shows where like you would talk about it to people and they'd be like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Yep.
And you're like, "Oh no, I've made it up."
Mhm.
But
For
I mean,
sure.
obviously I love everything that Jim Henson touches, so
Yeah.
here we are.
All right, Travis. What about you?
So I remember this show, and I think I remember more the Muppet show that played before it, because it would play in the Jim Henson Hour would
Mm-hmm.
be
We'll get
uh
into it, but yeah.
would be that, and then the Storyteller. And I probably watched more of the first half of the Jim Henson Hour than I did the Storyteller, but it just was more having to do with like my sister was too young to really get into the Storyteller stuff at that
Mm-hmm.
time. And so my parents would just kind of like, okay, you guys are done, sort of thing at that point. Um, but I remember watching a few episodes, and there were moments in this one that did come flooding back of like, I know I saw this,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mhm.
remember it,
Yeah.
and it was anything Jim Henson touched was magic, and
Right.
this was no exception.
Yeah.
This is not the first thing I think of with John Hurt, but that's mostly because I've seen Alien a lot. So, uh,
That'll do it.
however, I will say that watching this, if they had made the Lord of the Rings in the
Mhm.
late '80s, John Hurt would have been the perfect old Bilbo Baggins.
Ooh,
Yes.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he definitely has a
Yeah,
Hobbit vibe going on, especially that
for
robe
sure.
that he's got and
Yep,
Yeah.
everything.
the robe and the
The
fake, the big
ears.
fake nose that he
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
on, and all of that. Oh,
Yep.
it's perfect.
Yeah. So I'm definitely with you, Travis and Amy, in remembering the show. I definitely remember watching it. I don't remember if it was. We'll talk about the broadcast history. If it was with the Jim Henson Hour, whatnot. Um, this episode specifically is the one I remember above all of them that we'll get into, and I always go back to. And it definitely is that show where I'm like, I'll talk about it, and other people will look at me like, "What are you talking
What?
about?" Huh? And there's a reason for that.
Mm.
Hmm.
There's a couple good reasons for that. So yeah, we're talking about the Storyteller. It originally aired few episodes by themselves in 1987. Um, Created and produced by Jim Henson. The series the series retold various European folk tales, particularly ones that were more obscure to Western culture. And as with so many great Jim Henson stuff, it was combined humans and puppets and puppet characters. With the framing device being John Hurt as the storyteller, sitting by the fire, telling a tale to both us, the viewers, and his dog, who was a more realistic looking puppet, voiced and performed by Brian Henson. Um,
Using
I love
Hoggle's
this.
voice.
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
My wife called that.
Hmm.
She said, "That's Hoggle." And I was like, "Do
Yep.
what?" And she, yeah,
Hmm.
Yes,
And
it
absolutely.
is.
I love the storyteller's dog. The
Yeah.
puppet
Yeah.
is amazing.
Really good.
And in an episode of the Jim Henson Hour, The Secrets of the Muppets, Jim Henson actually told us that the storyteller himself was originally going to be a puppet himself, just fully puppet. However, one of the producers was like, Ron Muke filmed a test with facial prosthetics to suggest that an actor in makeup be more effective. And so they did this to John Hurt to give him to have an actual actor, but to give him those almost puppet qualities of
Yeah.
the oversized ears, the nose, and everything. Um, so here's why the broadcast history of this show is the way it is and what happened and why probably a lot of people are like, huh, when you ask them and talk to them about it. So let's see, 4 episodes. Hans My Hedgehog, Fear Not, A Short Story, and The Luck Child aired in that order in the US on NBC as standalone specials in January of 87, October of 87, January of 88, and April of 88, respectively. All
Right.
9 episodes of The Storyteller were aired in the UK on Channel 4 between May and July of 88. The Heartless Giant, The Soldier in Death, The True Bride, and Sap Sorrow first aired in that order in the US as part of the Jim Henson Hour on NBC. So the first two in April of 89, the latter two in July of 89. The Three Ravens was included in the Jim Henson Hour's 12th episode Food, but the series was canceled before it had a chance to actually air. So nobody saw The Three Ravens until 1997 when the show was rerun on HBO.
Wow.
Man.
Okay.
So that's the craziness of how it was produced and aired. On top of that, there was a follow-up, Storyteller Greek Myths. Used a different storyteller. This one was Michael Gambon. Had the same dog, Brian Henson again. This series was produced in 1990, shortly before Jim Henson died, but a U.S. broadcaster could not be found. NBC having deemed the original episodes too strong for children and refused to run them as separate series. So it basically remained unaired in the US until 1997, and all of them together were run as rerun episodes on HBO. But these episodes were aired in the Netherlands in April of 91 and then in the UK in December of 91. So that's the kind of crazy broadcast history of the Storyteller and the follow-up Greek myths.
And it does kind of make sense that NBC would balk at it, because watching this episode, like, this is a hard sell to parents for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Hence the theme of this
Yet-
this month's block of
Right.
shows.
Yeah, yet, like, I think it's really good for that. I think it
Mhm.
toes the line. It is, Henson, right? Dark Crystal,
Right.
Labyrinth. He had already established himself being able to do that. And
Well, also Henson, The Muppet Show, and Sesame Street.
right, yeah.
Right.
No, absolutely. And so I can totally see though why there'd be NBC execs like, maybe.
Well,
Mhm.
it was such a wild time though. Like the late '80s, scaring children was not off limits. It was
Yeah.
actually seemed to be
Right.
actively
Right.
encouraged for a time. I guess we were starting to get more into the we better not scare the kids kind of mode that we're in, especially now. But it seems like it would be an easier sell then, where they'd be like, well, of course, we should have some
Well,
weird story. I watched some funky stories on PBS based on
gonna say-
Grimm's fairy tales.
I think some of the stuff we got in the 80s was people being like, okay, we don't have to talk down to children. We can
Yeah.
tell them what life is really
Yeah.
like. Don Bluth did that when he left
Yes.
Disney with his films.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
still feel the trauma.
And
Mhm.
Jim Henson has done that throughout his career with everything. We've got Sesame Street, but we also have Labyrinth and The Storyteller and everything. So, like, yeah.
It's weird though. It's also a weird dichotomy to it, because on the one hand, it was a little bit of the Wild West and a little bit loosey goosey, but then the flip side of that is this was the decade that forced cartoons to have an educational message, which is why you had the more you know
Yeah.
segments, or the knowing is half the battle stuff in
Battle,
GI
yeah.
Joe.
right.
You also this is during Satanic Panic for things like
Mhm.
Dungeons and
Dungeons and
Dragons.
Dragons.
The Comic
Or-
Code
Chick
Authority.
tracks. Let's go.
Also, like, all the music stuff and taking musicians in front of Congress for, like,
Mhm.
obscenity and whatnot. So it's like it's both, which is why
Yeah.
I can absolutely see there being like a specific executive or two at NBC that are railing against doing that,
There's also
letting it
you-
be that.
there's not going to be a soldier and death breakfast cereal.
That's a good
You know what I mean?
point.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though
Even
you're
though the
not
Devils
gonna
might
get
make a good
the
little
the
breakfast
death
cereal.
cup playset is
That's
just
funny.
not happening.
You said that as soon as A Stigma was probably pressing enter in the chat, that it's just there's no
Yes.
merch to sell for kids.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, One more thing I want to bring up just because it's me. So Jim Henson directed several episodes. One notable director was Steve Barron. Now
Oh yeah.
Henson worked with Steve Barron on the music videos for David Bowie's songs As the World Falls Down and Underground from Labyrinth. Jim was so impressed with Barron's work that he invited him to direct several episodes on the series. Here's why I bring him up, because this is my nerdy self bringing it in. Barron would go on to direct the 1990 live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Yep.
And
What?
knew
it's
that's where
because
you were
of
going.
Great
him.
movie.
It's because of him that he brought in Henson and the workshop to make the Turtles costumes.
And that movie still holds
All
up.
comes full circle.
I watched
Yep.
it
It
recently.
does.
It's a good
Absolutely.
movie.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll die on that hill.
Yeah.
That movie is so
Yeah.
great.
It's just a good one. It's just a good movie. Turtles or no.
Mhm. Yep. So, but bringing it back to the Storyteller, so we watched the episode "The Soldier and Death." Again, this is the one I remember the most from this series, and
If
watching it
you'd
again.
asked me before we watched it if I remembered it, I would have said no. But we'll get to
Mhm.
the point at which I went, "Oh, I do. I very much do. Oh, this is deep. This is deep trauma. I remember this. Okay.
I tucked this away deep below.
Yeah. Oh."
Yep. So we get the little intro music, and then that this story comes from an early Russian folktale. It was actually taken from an early Russian folktale retold in English by Arthur Ransom, but also incorporated another story uh, from I think Grimm's fairy tales or adjacent, called The Godfather Death, which is
Okay.
where the death part actually comes from. So we'll get there. So we get our intro with the storyteller and his dog. There's a sack on the floor that the dog's sniffing at and asking the storyteller about. The storyteller tells him there's nothing in there but some biscuits. Um, um, but he's got the sack because of the story he's going to tell. And the dog's like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "An ancient story." And the dog is like, "Oh, that means stale biscuits. Great."
Nobody could intro this stuff like John Hurt can. Like, I didn't
Yeah.
know
Oh,
it was
yeah.
him. Again, I thought I knew what the show this was, and I didn't. And when I saw John Hurt's name, I was like, "Oh man, that's good." And then he starts talking, and like,
Mhm.
actors or no, I'm like, just keep the camera on him at the fire. I don't need anything. I'm happy.
Right.
Like, just I'm
Yeah.
enthralled right now.
And he has this ability to have, he has a voice that is not the smooth, it's not Morgan
No.
Freeman. It's not
No.
a smooth voice that puts you at ease, yet it is an incredible voice for telling a story. There is so much like flavor and color to his voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
of
that
course.
rasp to it. He was fantastic. I miss him still.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with Amy. This is where I know John Hurt from, before I knew who John Hurt was.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So he starts telling the story about a soldier coming home from war with only a shilling in his pocket and 3 dried biscuits, and whistling all his way here. And it's really funny. The first person he comes across is a fiddle player, and he starts to mimic the fiddle player while he's whistling, even though his mouth is not making any sort of shape that looks like he could be
No,
whistling
like
at
a
all.
whistle.
Not at
Nothing.
all.
But
That
we're
man cannot whistle.
we're
I'll
forgiving
stand, I'll die
that.
on that hill.
But we don't care because we're looking at one
No,
of
we
the
don't care.
best matte paintings with someone
Yes.
superimposed on it that you've ever seen.
Oh, I
It
love
had
that.
so much
Mhm.
1991 CD-ROM storybook in a box vibes
Yeah.
to me.
Yes.
I
Mhm.
was like,
Let's go.
I played this game. I can see
It
it.
worked because it's a story being told, so you
Right.
get that feeling of we're looking in a
in a
book.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
That soldier, by the way, played by Bob Peck.
Muldoon.
When he came, when he came on
Mhm.
screen, I'm like, why does his face look familiar
Yes.
to me?
Yes.
And then when I realized he was Muldoon in Jurassic Park,
Yep.
I was
And it's
staring
just-
at him.
loved it.
Yep.
I was staring at him for so long, Travis. I was like, why does this guy look like Jason
Mhm.
Isaacs and Tim Roth had a baby?
A little bit, yeah. Mhm.
And then it finally dawned on me later. I was looking at his stare. I'm like, he's looking at a raptor. That's flipping Muldoon. He made the same face.
It's hard to recognize him without his shorts and his gigantic calf muscles.
Yeah, all
But,
I
Right.
remember is his thighs. So it was
or his
difficult.
thighs, yeah. Um,
Yes.
So he offers the fiddle player one of the only things he has, a biscuit, and goes on. Next, he comes across a drummer. This is one of those times where we're getting mostly the storyteller and not so much what's
Yes.
happening. And again, like you said before, it's like we just need the storyteller there. We just need John Hurt telling us, and I'm like, that's pretty much what we get, and it's great. We see the
Mhm.
story playing out behind him in the painting behind him.
That
And the
was so good. Like the
so
number of
good.
times that it goes somewhere else. It goes
Mhm.
into the paintings. It goes onto his tankard at one
Yep.
point.
Right.
Oh,
I was
so
loved all
sucked
of-
in. I was totally drawn in, not just by him, but by that stuff that it's in the background shadow play stuff. I was,
Mhm.
I mean,
Com-
I had my mind
mean-
blown today. It was
And
awesome.
you combine that too with like Henson is directing this episode and he's doing these weird Dutch tilts and low
Yeah.
angle shots. You got like low angle Dutch tilt of John Hurt standing in front of a fireplace, and in the background is the story playing out. Like I just loved all of that. It's so
And
visually
There's some very
engaging.
clever shadow work with geese that I was honestly
Yeah.
pretty impressed
Mhm.
with.
Yes.
It's one of
Mhm.
those things where like you realize just how freaking talented Jim Henson and his crew really
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're used to seeing them, not that the puppets work is not talent in itself,
Right.
but just how much further he can push them.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, I could do puppets. Oh, I could do some puppets.
Yeah.
So we move on. He comes to a card player, and the card player is just, shuffling the cards, playing his cards, and admiring the soldiers. Uh, Again, whistle. And the soldier, again, doesn't have any money to offer the card player, but does have a biscuit. Um,
But it's
but
his last biscuit.
it's his last biscuit, and he's kind of hungry, and he tears it in two, but he cannot give this man less than he gave anyone else. So he gives him the full biscuit. Did anybody else recognize this particular actor where he was from? Travis, I know
Yes,
you
he
did.
did.
I was too busy thinking that the Full
True.
Biscuit is the name of my next ska band. I love
Yes.
that.
Oh my
Amazing.
gosh. All right, Travis, tell us.
That was Walter Sparrow, better known to those of us who have seen Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves,
Bam.
as Duncan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, snap. I love
Yeah.
Duncan.
Mhm.
Yep.
I do too.
So the soldier gives him his last biscuit, and in return, the card player gives him his sack and his playing cards that says he'll never lose with them, and it tells him that anything he orders into the sack will go in there. So the soldier moves on and decides to put the sack to the test and goes off to the scene where we see him by the lake and decides to tell some geese to get in the sack. And sure enough, they get in the sack.
It's so good because it's just the silhouettes of geese running
Mm-hmm.
while he holds open a bag, and you just buy it
Yeah.
because you're like, how are we gonna get these geese in this bag? And it's like, all right, well, you know what? Maybe we don't.
Yeah. It's one of those things of like, okay, can we realistically make this work? No. So we're going to do as close to as we can in a different way to make you think that's what's happening.
Yeah.
The shadow work of doing it.
Really
that way.
good.
This is what made Henson such an amazing filmmaker because it's just outside the box thinking like this. Just these kind of scenes and shots he did all the time that just you would not, normal people didn't think like this in 1987. It's
Mhm.
not what we did. He was breaking ground everywhere he went.
Yep. So the soldier has his sack of geese now, and he comes across an inn, goes inside, still whistling as ever, as happily as ever. The innkeeper is like, well, oh, that's quite a whistle. Asks him, just back from war, what do you have in your sack? And the soldier's like, well, I've got some geese in there. I'd like one for supper, please. if you'll cook it for me, I'll give you the other two. I'll take some supper and a bed. And the innkeeper apparently is perfectly fine with this arrangement, goes and grabs the bag.
I mean, it's pretty quiet,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
it's
it's
not exactly
quiet.
Sure.
bustling.
And we
There's
also
there's
don't
a
know
lot
we
of
don't know the exchange
yeah.
rate of geese to shillings, right?
Sure.
We don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We're
there's
not there
also
with
I'm just
the
saying,
geese.
there's no
a
bargaining
haunted
here.
castle down the hall, down the road. So
Right.
you know,
There's no bargaining. The innkeeper's just like, sure,
yeah,
it works for
great.
me.
I wonder if
And
he
the
told.
soldiers,
I wonder if he figured out there was live geese in the sack. Like how quick he's like.
Because you hear it when he hands over the bag.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
just hear like, like, oh no.
um, the soldier is quick to say, "Hey, return my sack." Just FYI. Um, so he gets a good dinner. He gets a room and a bed. And 3 days later, apparently, he wakes up.
I mean, he's
Some-
been walking for a long time.
Oh yeah,
I've been there.
yeah, for sure. But he
these
wakes
days
up.
you make a tryptophan joke.
Yeah.
Right. hmm He wakes up. He looks out his window and he sees there's a palace right across the way. The innkeeper apparently heard him getting up and brought him some breakfast. It's like, so here's the deal. So the palace apparently was taken over by devils. Devils. Um, apparently they've run everybody off or taken care of them. There's nothing more than, at least nothing more than shadows. And so the soldier, seeing another opportunity,
Because the devils use it for their card games.
right?
Mhm.
Yep.
That's the important part. They're like,
Yes.
someone should take it back. It's like a whole army did, and they got wiped out.
Yep.
So he's like, card games. All right.
Right.
Fantastic. Can do.
So the soldier grabs his sack and he's got his cards and he heads over to the palace. It's daytime, so we don't get any devils yet, but we get to see what the devils have done. We see all kinds of skeletons all over the place. One on the
Mhm.
table, nice skull with a knife in the eye socket,
You know,
and stuff. Turned over.
kid stuff.
Yeah,
Right,
kid stuff.
exactly. This was for kids. Um, so the soldier waits and waits until it's night, until his candle is slowly burning out, and then midnight comes, and boom, the devils show up.
Okay. When he lights the candle
Yes.
and all of the devils are around him,
Yes.
that was burned in my head. I
Uh-huh.
was like, oh no, I do remember. Oh,
Yep.
this scared the
Uh-huh.
living daylights out
Uh-huh.
of me.
Oh, I literally jump scared. I'm a 39-year-old man. I was like, oh, gee. Scared the crap out of me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yep.
Well
Yep.
done.
And it did it definitely did make an impression on me. However, I think, and I may not be certain on this, but I think I may have seen the movie Legend
Oh,
before I saw this episode
Ooh,
as a kid.
probably.
So it's quite possible that I had been so like I had seen Legend, You Can't Hurt Me.
Right. Oh, these are devils? Really? These little skinny things?
Oh,
Sure.
they're
There's the-
so, but they're good. They're creepy.
They're
They're like the
amazing.
Guillermo del Toro,
Yeah.
tooth fairies. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like they're
right.
Yes.
all spindly and
Mm-hmm.
oh, they're so good.
They are
And they're very
amazing.
shiny.
mhm.
Very shiny, amazing
Very
little puppets, but
shiny.
very realistically rendered puppets
Mhm.
with those eyes and those teeth that they all have.
Oh, yeah,
And
their
their
My
lip,
and their
second
lips.
favorite
curl.
puppets in this episode. Like
Mm-hmm.
the storyteller's dog. Sorry.
Yeah.
On a different level, but
Yeah.
in terms of the story, like those they were just awesome. And the main one that we hear from is voiced by the same actor as Sir Didymus in Labyrinth.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, the devils were great, talking about all the different things they want from the soldier. Like Amy Red Frabo in the chat is saying, "I collect teeth."
I love that so much.
It's really good because they say a bunch of things, and he's like, "You're your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
I collect teeth," and you're like, "Yeah, no, I get it. No, it's not weird. No,
Yeah,
we
you're-
understand. We all have hobbies."
And I
Yeah.
love that the soldier just looks at him like, "Okay, sure."
All
Mhm.
right. What do
and
you have?
Yeah.
And so he's like, "Okay, let's play for cards then." And they're all telling him what they want from him, and he's like, "Well, what do you have to offer?" And they say, "Well, we've got 40 barrels of gold," and they bring it
40
all out.
barrels of gold.
Mm-hmm.
Which
And so,
I love that we're not. It took me a minute to realize that we weren't just doing it, right? Like my life for your 40 barrels.
Yeah.
No, we're going to earn it coin by coin.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Hand by hand. So they start playing, and they keep playing hand after hand after hand. And I love that the thing about these cards that are so magical is that even the devils are trying to cheat, and he's still winning.
mhm.
That's my favorite.
Like,
My favorite line is like, "Is he cheating? I don't know. I am, and I'm still losing."
right?
So great.
Also, there was the one little devil that was smoking the whole time.
Oh yeah,
Right.
with the
That's how
cigarette in his
you,
mouth.
that's how you know this was made in the 80s,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
he
yeah.
just had like the
Yeah.
cigarette hanging out of his mouth the whole time. I
Uh-huh.
love
Yeah.
that.
I love
And
the
then
line
they-
where they were saying, or the John Hurt's voiceover says, they cheated to high heaven and low hell.
Low hell.
I love that.
Yes.
Yep. And then all the devils started smoking. The other great thing about these puppets, because they are so mad that they are fuming from their ears.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
So, and they just can't take it. It gets to the point where, oh, it's morning. I guess we're done. And the devil's like, no, we're not done. We're gonna kill you. And the soldier's like,
Yeah, we're going to
oh,
eat you.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mhm.
we're gonna eat you. And the soldier's like, oh, really? What is this? And they're like, a sack. And he's like, oh, yeah, really? Okay, get in it. And immediately they all
They
get sucked in.
hoovered in.
Yes.
And then I love what the soldier does next is he takes the sack outside and just beats the snot out of him in the sack, throwing it around.
Throws
So-
it down and
Oh.
sits on it.
Mm-hmm.
I
This
loved
was
it.
this was so good, and I was curious about the original folktale, so I looked it up, and this show, it's very close to the original text, like
Mhm.
down to
Nice.
the quotes. Very very close to the original text. This is a place where it deviated, which I'm guessing was for time, because in the original text he takes it to an ironsmith, and the ironsmith beats the tar out of it.
Nice.
So it's like that's one more set. That's another cast member. We should
Yeah,
let him
yeah, yeah.
kick it around a bunch. But I thought that was fun.
That was great. So apparently, this beating was enough to scare the mess out of the devils. So he tells them, "All right, are you done? Will you leave finally?" And they're like, "Yes, just let us out of the sack." But just before they all fly away, he grabs one by the foot, um, and basically makes that devil swear service to him and keeps his foot in it until he does. Um, the devil's like, "Fine, whatever," and just flies off while he's got the little devil foot. And then we get the storyteller telling us how rich and powerful this actually made the soldier now.
Like 40 barrels of
40
gold.
barrels
right.
of gold.
By the way, Travis, can you print a little devil foot that I can grow a plant in? Because that looked amazing.
100% we can make that happen.
Uh-huh.
I'm making myself a note.
Yep,
Yeah, we can make that happen. No problem.
for sure.
Ooh, black flowers.
So yeah, the soldier is rich and powerful now, so much so that the Tsar comes back to his palace where he was before. Who knows? But he comes back to the palace and even lets the soldier live in the palace with him and whoever else. The soldier now has a family. He has a wife and a son. Um, so time has passed, and then the soldier's son falls into a fever, and nobody can help. They get whatever doctor types they can, they get whatever religious types they can. Nobody can seem to help his son with this fever at all.
That was
love-
another great piece of shadow work.
It
Mhm.
was.
Because you've got all the gray beard, like the
Right.
room was full of gray beards, all the quacks and the it was so
Mhm.
good.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
you see all their shadows, and then it switches to those Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox priests with the big
Right.
hair, with the big
Mhm.
hats.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, oh,
It
Yep.
was so good.
dreamy.
So well done. And probably one of my favorite lines in the entire episode is when he's like thinking about what the devil could do. And then he says, "Where the devil is that devil of mine?" Love that line. And then the devil just poof shows up.
Okay, but then is the funniest part of the entire episode.
Yeah. And it's like, "Hello, devil. This is my wife. Wife, this is my devil."
That was
Yeah.
so good.
Like obviously, and she's just like,
Yeah.
"Hi."
Hi.
Played
how do
so
you do?
straight too. It was just
Yeah,
like
she-
serious.
She takes that information in quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, he asks his devil what could be done, and this is where the devil pulls out the little glass chalice and tells the soldier about, hey, you see through here. The soldier's looking, like, yeah, and then we see our next puppet character, Death itself.
So I was thinking about it, right? Because it's so creepy.
Mm,
Because it's
Incredibly
kind
creepy.
of like a kid, and it's almost like the ghost of Christmas future from Christmas Carol. You know what I mean? That it's like this cute
mhm.
little innocent thing, but
Christmas
that it
past in that, right?
Yeah. Christmas
yeah
That was
future
the
we
past.
couldn't
ethereal
Yeah.
one.
see.
Future's the thing. Future's
Yeah.
the
Might have even
Grim
been the
Reaper.
same puppet for all we know.
No, it's a little
similar.
I think it was different. It looked a lot like Wormtail from Lord of the Rings. Or
Yeah.
Worm
yeah,
Tongue.
but it's
Uh-huh.
that same vibe, right?
Right.
It's that
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
Yeah.
kid thing.
Yeah, and I was
So-
in the chat here a little bit ago. I don't remember who said it, but the death, like, and to me, like, it's very unsettling, but it kind of gives you this view of like, hey, Death is this innocent little curious kid, really, at the end of the day, like just looking to make friends. Just happens to be killing them, you know. But
Yeah.
that's also its job.
I mean, the soldier does say something at one point about if Death wants a friend,
Yeah,
there's nothing I can do.
yeah, for sure.
So the devil shows him that, if death is at the foot of somebody's bed, then if you sprinkle a little water from the glass chalice, they'll recover. If death is at the head of their bed, then there's nothing that
It's
can be
too late.
done. It is too late. Which is funny because I actually read the Godfather death story that this part comes from, and they switched it up. Like in that story, it's like if death is at
Really?
the foot, then there's nothing that can be done. If he's at the head, you
I
can
wonder
save
if
him.
that because there's a lot of like folklore and stuff like in some Chinese cultures, you're not supposed to have your bed so that the foot of your bed is towards the door because your soul can leave out the door. It's like a whole
Right.
thing.
Sure.
So I wonder if it's like connected to that, but it doesn't make sense if that's not
Right.
the way that you exist.
Mm-hmm. Could be.
Hmm.
Or just, they changed it up for whatever reason. So the devil gives the soldier the glass. He sprinkles the water on his son, and immediately his son is back to normal. And so the soldier kind of marvels at this, and then he's like, "Hey, you know what? Tell you what, devil, let me have that glass, and you're free." And the devil's like, "Really?" It's like, "Yeah." And then actually gives him his foot as well.
Yeah, so the foot was in exchange for helping his son.
Right.
It's like, if you help my son, I'll give you your foot back. And then he's like, all right, well, if you give me the glass,
Right.
then I will free you from your obligation.
And the devil's like, yeah, sure, whatever.
And there's weird black lilies growing out of
Mhm.
the devil's foot.
Yep.
It's a very trusting
good.
world of devils. Like these devils seem to be
Right?
pretty good at
Mhm.
making deals and honoring them. You know, it's not,
Yeah.
it's not the
I mean,
way
that's
I've
a
seen
lot
devils.
of Fae, though, right? Like as long as you're doing the route, like if you're playing the game,
Yeah.
Yeah.
as long as you're pretty specific
Right.
about what you're looking for, you're probably going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. It happens. The devil went down to Georgia, so
Yeah. Right? I mean, he did not drag the child to hell, which
Mhm.
seems like it could have been an option.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, lost a fiddle contest.
So this in turn gives the soldier something else to gain fame and fortune by, as being this mystical, magical healer. And I love the storyteller just telling us about it. He's like, if he gets to somebody and he's able to save them, it's great. And they pay them everything they can. If he doesn't get there in time, they're like, well, he tried. So they pay them anyways. So it's kind of
Left
a
his
no lose
wife
situation.
and child to take a camel around the world.
Yep.
Come on,
That's
man.
how it was done back then. You know, you got to put food
Yeah.
on the table. He was probably mailing money home.
40 barrels of gold.
Mhm.
The man does not have to work. He has
Yep.
chosen to take this camel.
Raising a child is expensive.
That's fair.
Truth.
In
Hashtag
Russia,
truth.
where everyone has a English accent.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the soldier's off, and then he gets word that the old czar is ill. And he gets back, and he raises the glass chalice and finds death at the head of the czar, and that he is too late. There's nothing that can be done. The czar's are we told it's his wife or not? But
Well, when we say later, like when later he talks about like the czar's 50 wives, so I think it's probably one of them.
Okay. I mean, that's what I assumed.
I
So,
assumed.
Yeah.
she's like, you've done everything, all this stuff, and you can't save him.
You've saved beggars and thieves and cats and dogs, and you're not going to save the czar. And it is like, yeah, man, well, you saved the castle. Like,
Right.
he wouldn't even be a czar. He would not have a palace.
Mm-hmm.
But fine.
So the soldier, being the kind of guy he is, like, nope, I owe him. So he lifts up the glass again and talks to Death himself and says, hey, I'll take his place if you'll leave him right now. And Death's just like, sure, okay. Pieces out.
Soul's a soul, man.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Sprinkles water, and the czar is just doing just dandy and fine. And praise be, praise be. And the soldier walks off into the shadows, and then we get him in his deathbed.
Excellent
wife and
cross
son there.
dissolve here, by the way. So
Yeah.
well done. Loved
sure.
it.
Mm.
So anyway, we've got the soldier in his deathbed, his wife and his son, who hasn't aged in any of this time.
No.
Nope.
No.
Not at all.
That's fine.
But then he pulls out the glass chalice to look where Death is. And of
Because she's
course-
like, is this it?
Mhm.
right.
Yep.
And he's like, let me see. And he looks at the chalice and he's like, oh, Death's right there. And then he pulls out his sack as well. He's like, Death, what's this? And Death's like, it's a sack. And he's like, get in it. And Death immediately gets sucked into the sack. Again, in the same way that the geese, we don't see anything. We just see the reaction.
It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
And he closes the sack and he jumps with jubilation because he has caught and
It's like
captured Death.
found a golden ticket level of excitement.
Mm-hmm.
Almost dislocates his child's arm,
Yeah, he's
I know.
yanking him up on the bed. I was like, oh
Yeah.
no.
This also comes back to bite him later when he's in Jurassic Park and he thinks there's only one raptor.
Yeah.
Because there was
Yeah.
only one death that time. He wasn't prepared.
No.
Mhm. So I love that we get the storyteller telling us how gossip works in this instance.
Yes, it's wonderful.
That in 4.5 minutes, the whole town knew. In 17 minutes, the whole country knew.
Mhm.
And by the following morning, it was known in 1,000 languages.
So good.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
The language thing was excellent.
It's
Mhm.
really good.
Even the dog telling us in Greek.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Loved it.
What was the phrase?
Um,
Death is prisoner, or death is
Yeah.
death is a prisoner, or something
Mhm.
like that. Yeah, that's
Right.
super cool.
So nothing was able to die. We get another one of our shadow storybook paintings of the soldier taking the sack with Death to the tallest tree you could find, tying it at the top, and then just falling out.
Now, I know it's a folktale,
Mm-hmm.
but this is always my problem with the we've captured death, because that's a fairly regular trope that goes around. We've captured death so no one can die. Okay, but you can like break a leg though. Like you
True.
can
Yeah.
fracture your spine,
Yeah.
and that seems worse
Well, it
in some
seems-
ways.
Seen from the storyteller's point, or the way he's telling it, injury can't occur, but old
Yeah.
age very much can.
Mhm.
Old age,
Uh-huh.
arthritis,
Mhm.
other
Yeah.
things that just happen are
Yeah.
coming for you one way or the other. But you
Because
get
the soldier-
stabbed and be okay.
Right. The soldier falls from the tree, nothing happens. Apparently, wars and battles are being fought with all kinds of weapons, and nothing's happening somehow. And
They're
then we
just
get,
exhausted at the end of the day, but nobody's
Yeah.
dead.
Nobody's
Right.
dead.
and then we get all these old people standing around outside the soldier's house, or outside his window at the palace. And this is when he's like, "Oh man,
Oh,
I guess
'Cause
I
they're-
should."
They're
living
out there
forever
just-
kind of sucks, I guess, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah, they're just out there longing for death.
They're all
Which-
45 years old.
Hey now.
But it
Yeah.
Hey
it is a
now.
really
know.
it is a really interesting take on immortality that more often than not in fantasy stories of immortals they don't age
Right.
as well.
Right.
But I love the idea that nobody can die, but everybody does age.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. So he decides to go back up to that tree and get the sack and brings it back down and decides to free Death. Um, and
And
what
he's
is
willing to pay his price.
right?
Yep.
He's like,
Yeah.
take me and just set everything right.
Yep. And Death jumps out of the sack, and as the storyteller tells us, he is afraid to ever go back to the soldier again. So
He's
that
gonna put him back in the bag.
Yeah.
right. So the
Death just
soldier
nopes it right on out of there.
he
Mhm.
now lives on, even though everybody else around him is able to die. So he starts living the immortal life, growing older, wanting death to come for him, but death won't.
Real quick question though. Death is now free, right, to
Mhm.
do Death's
Mhm.
job.
Yeah.
Is this a Santa Claus situation where now he's got to the Death has to visit everyone in one night and make up for lost time?
I mean,
Or
I don't know if you've read Discworld, but
I
that's a
have
pretty good
some.
pretty good take on death in that it's kind of a can be anywhere and there's you've got your hourglass runs out. So I think he's just, has collected all of them.
Sure.
No problem.
And if
he's got a
there's
quota to keep.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, and if there's somebody walking around waiting to die, they're probably like, I don't care, go for it.
Yeah,
Do it now."
I can wait. Yeah. Do you want me to take a number or I will hold for the next representative?
Beetlejuice level of tape pull numbers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh. So the soldier is wandering around the earth, not able to die, but still holding on to the sack.
I mean, you never
Which-
know when you're gonna need some geese.
True. But if that's what's scaring death away, I'd be like, okay, look, I don't have it.
Yeah.
Come get
Gone.
me. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he goes to hell
Yeah, why not? First
and
thought.
goes to
Off the edge of
See-
the earth.
see if they'll take him
Down
down
to
there. And I love that he's going to the doors of hell. They're just wooden doors somehow, and the devils come out through little windows, and they immediately see the sack and are afraid. and
They're
are
like,
just
"Nope,
nope,
nope,
nope, nope, nope,
Nope.
nope, nope.
nope. Just a
Ye-
sinner here to offer his soul. No,
No, we
absolutely
don't want
not.
it. We got plenty.
Do not.
So he's like, fine. Give me the way to heaven, and I'll be on my way. Oh, and give me some souls to take with me too.
200 souls that
Mhm.
you're
And-
not using anymore.
Right.
Yeah. And again, this is that wonderful Muppets Henson humor, right? Because like the devils come out and they're like, no, and he's like,
One-
well, fine, then give me the a map to heaven, basically, and the door
On the
just
way
opens up
there.
and a map
Just
flies
throws
out.
it.
Flies
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And then they're
Falls to his
trying to
feet.
bargain with him. 200 souls you're not using anymore. Now 150. It's like, what is this? Fine,
Mhm.
200.
See, this was
Yeah.
this was another fun twist on the original folktale because the original folktale he asked for 200, and the demons were like, "We'll give you 250 to go away." They actually up it,
Nice. We'll give you
but it's a
more.
perfect comedy opportunity between them to haggle it in reverse.
Mhm.
Yep.
I thought that was cool too.
So then he gets to the gates of heaven with all 200 souls. And I can only assume it's St. Peter in shadow is like, everybody's welcome, but you.
Mhm.
You
He's
can't
like,
screw
"Look,
with
I
death
brought
and
these
get in.
200 souls.
Yeah. And they're like, nope. Even heaven's like, nope. And so the 200 souls go in. He hands his sack to one of these 200 souls, like, okay, when you get through the gates, call me in, please.
Call me in."
Mm-hmm. But they go in, and the storyteller continues to tell us that once you pass the gates and are into heaven, your memory fades. So they
That
don't
made me
remember.
very sad.
Oh yeah, this is
I was like,
heartbreaking.
oh
Mhm.
man.
I wrote it in bold. This story is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because at this point, like, so he's cursed to walk the earth. He goes to hell, and hell's like, we don't want you. So he devises a plan to go to heaven, and it's clever. It's very
Mhm.
clever.
I mean,
You
because
know,
I think
hey, I
like
brought you 200
I
souls.
think ideally he's like 200 souls plus one.
Yeah.
I'm the
Yeah.
plus one.
Right.
Good? Good.
Mhm.
No? Okay, quick thinking. Here we
Yeah.
go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, trying to use the sack to his benefit, and it does not work because there's no memory in heaven. And so they immediately forget about the soldier, and he is forced now to wander the earth.
He waits outside the gates for like a long time
Right.
and then just gives up and goes back to Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I do like that it's commutable. You can just go.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
seems good.
Mm-hmm.
Walk until you, what is it? It's like follow this until you can't anymore and then walk
Go
until you,
up.
yeah, go up until you feel like, and I can't remember
Well,
what
it
he
feel like you're
said.
standing on your head,
Standing on your head.
Yes.
and that's
Yeah.
the edge of
That's it.
heaven.
Right.
Really good.
So he's forced to wander the earth. And we go back to the storyteller and the dog's kind of sad about it. And storyteller's like, don't worry about him. He's good. He's, just going about his business. It's one of those things where it's hinted that the storyteller could be the soldier,
Mm-hmm.
telling us his own tale.
Yeah, because he has the regiment on his robe. He
Right, he's
introduces
got the
that at the
regiment on his
beginning. Yeah.
robe. The sack is still there. The dog's, looking at it. It's like, if this is a sack, then get in it. Nothing happens.
He just takes it and throws it.
He throws it to the side. The dog's like, just checking. But I love that he throws it towards the camera and us. And then all of a sudden, one of the devils pops out of the sack
Yeah.
and runs off.
That was
And
great.
nobody really sees it. The dog thinks he sees something, but he's like not sure. It's like, whatever. And that's the end of the episode.
Okay,
The
but he gets
soldier.
the biscuit.
He does get
Yes.
the
And he
biscuit.
Dog-
takes it in. Like, have you ever had a dog that's really super polite when they take a treat? That's what it was. And it was so good. Just the very
That's-
polite. Is that what
Mhm.
she does? Very
That's Bella.
polite and then munch, munch, munch
Yep.
in the way that only Muppets can.
Yep.
Ah.
So that's the end of the soldier and death. So what did everybody think? Steven, I'm going to start with you, as you had not seen it before. What did you think of this? What's your impression now?
Yeah, the best I can give you is there are only a handful of things that I will happily rewatch over and over out of a sense of awe at the pure artistry of a thing. Like, honestly, there's like there's one sequence in the Coen Brothers Bow to Buster Scruggs that I will just go turn on sometimes and just be like, this is a phenomenal piece of cinema. And this is definitely on that list. I could watch this over again and just stare mouth agape at what I'm seeing. It blew my mind, and I think it's going to be one of those things that I will always go back like amazed at. And I'm watching the rest of this series because I have to. This is amazing.
Travis, what about you?
Same for me. I mean, just it's such amazing artistry throughout. There's so many things going on, and I can rewatch this and just pay attention to the camera movements, and I can rewatch it and just pay attention to the backgrounds, and then do a watch just to look at all the puppetry and everything like that. And it's a fantastic story, but also like a heartbreaking, dark, you know, kind of scary story too, which is really, really, it just, I can't say anything bad about it. It is fantastic. I think if I had one gripe, it's that everybody in Russia speaks with an English accent, and I found that funny.
Yeah,
It's funny.
I'm
I
fine
mean,
with it.
sure.
Yeah.
Amy, what about you?
It's so good. I did watch the next couple. I didn't get to watch the whole thing because my last week was an adventure. But I'm gonna go back and watch all of them. And it's just there's
Mhm.
so many little things, like all the ways they tie it back, like whatever's happening in the story back to the storyteller. And it's like this is, I mean, because I am a storyteller. I have always been a storyteller, and it is like a big part of my life right now is being a storyteller. And like this is it. This is what I want to do. This is the level of art, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's just so inspiring, and I just I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, and I loved it as well. I mean, I'm gonna have to go watch everything. It's funny, I was in the process of a move and found that I actually had the DVD collection set of this.
Ooh.
Oh,
So
wow.
But it's funny you were talking about Steven about how it's like a movie. Like, I've got a book, one of my favorite books, No Strings Attached, talking about Henson and all his work and stuff. And at one point in it, they're talking about how this is one of those shows where they were, doing movie quality work on a TV budget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Um,
easy.
and but they made it work so well. Um, and the whole series is like that, and it's done so well. Um, and I know Kurt was asking earlier in the chat about an episode with a kid that finds a creature shop and a dragon. That is definitely one of the episodes. Definitely go look at it. Everything is on Prime right now, um, Amazon Prime, so you can go watch it there for sure. So if you had the time, definitely go seek it out. Any of these episodes, they're great. But yeah, that was a storyteller. Um, so did we get any feedback anywhere for this?
We did. Well, we didn't get feedback for this. We got feedback for a previous episode. Did we get feedback for this first, and then I'll go. I know we didn't get an
I did
email.
not see any feedback for this in particular, other than some likes and
Yeah.
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was about the same thing for me. So.
We got tons of feedback in our chat. Red Fraggle, clearly a fan of this
Mhm.
of this
Oh,
show.
yeah.
So that's great. I mean, as of course. But
Right.
we also got some feedback in our YouTube channel. We got some comments on the Garfield Christmas episode. So this comment comes from Joshua, who says, "A Garfield Christmas was my absolute favorite animated Christmas special as a kid. As a matter of fact, I still watch it every Christmas as an adult. I think I watched it 3 times this Christmas in 2024. I remember that my mom made me a copy of all the Christmas specials as a kid, Garfield, Charlie Brown, and Mickey Christmas Carol, etc. I wish I still had that old VHS copy so I would also have all the period commercials for that added dose of childhood nostalgia. Happy holidays to
one-
all of you."
There's 2 that stick that were for sure on my tapes. There's the Campbell's soup one where the
Yeah.
kid is the snowman,
Uh-huh.
which they still run. Like, I've seen it. And then the Folgers one where the guy comes home. And if you're making coffee in the middle of the night to wake everyone up, that's not cool. I know that now.
Yeah.
But,
Stop it.
yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for the YouTube comments. That's an excellent place to leave a comment.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
So definitely, if you're watching on YouTube, thank you, and leave a comment there. If you want to email us, those were the days show at gmail.com. If you want us to follow us on all the socials, Blue Sky seems to be the one to hit us up and doing the best right now. So those days show.bisky.social.
Yep.
Follow the show there, follow us there. All our social media handles will be in the show notes and stuff. So definitely let us know what you thought of this and any other shows that you have seen up to this point. Even if it's something that you're just catching up on, let us know. We want to hear it from you, no matter what.
Absolutely.
So let us know. Okay. So our next pick comes from Steven.
Yes. So
What are you
Travis
bringing us?
earlier, Travis said the words "the Wild West," and no,
Mhm.
I'm not bringing us a western, but I am bringing us a show from what might have been the entertainment Wild West of kid television, Nickelodeon, because they didn't know what they were doing and didn't have anybody telling them what to do, and it was a wonderful period of children's television. So this is for kids. We're gonna watch Salute Your Shorts.
Nice.
Season 1, episode 2, Ghost Story. That one is streaming on Paramount Plus. So I hope that's in the legal realm of things we can stream. I think we've watched Paramount Plus before.
You should be
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Salute Your Shorts. I'm very excited for this one.
Yeah.
That is going to be great.
Yeah,
I remember that show, so I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah.
it was in the sweet spot for me. Right there.
So definitely, if you're listening to this beforehand, definitely let us know what you thought about Salute Your Shorts. If you watched it or just watch along, go ahead and watch it and let us know after the fact. But we definitely want to hear from you. But that's it for this episode. So until next week, for Amy, for Travis, for Steven, I'm Audie. Go watch some TV you thought was just for kids and enjoy it. And we'll see you next week here on Those Were the Days.